Hello, this is Ollie Wu. I'm back with yet another video tutorial, and this time it's about putting it all together, what we did in previous videos. We will use a tape plugin which features an EQ curve, a saturation curve, and optionally also a dynamics curve. And as an example, I will be again using the PluginDoctor plugin from DDMF because it has everything under one hood. I can show you in the case of the Air Windows tape, we have an EQ curve under linear analysis. This is where we previously used the Bertom EQ curve analyzer. We already used this tool here to do harmonic analysis under this tab, and we've also used this tool to do dynamic analysis. Currently, there's no dynamic switched in. So here we go. I set the input very low, mostly for this analysis, and I set the output to the full value and also this output. I just switched off the flutter for now, and the head bump probably set it down a bit. This is what's happening over here. So let's look into the second plugin. Here I recommend that you use some kind of chaining plugin. We already used the free QSHView element, and it's from a company called Excite Audio called KSHMR Chain. I'm using the leader plugin here. So that also has a very cool way to add all kinds of plugins. So I'm combining this now, and I'm using, at first try, one plugin per discipline. So the linear analysis, this would be our EQ. And you could, of course, use here the famous FabFilter Pro Q4, which is quite fast to dial in, but you could use any other EQ, of course, that has ability to dial in something quickly. Okay, so for harmonic analysis, dial in the next tab. This looks very similar to the odd overtones only structure that we've seen in another example of a tape plugin in another tutorial. So I've brought in candidate here that I've used before as well, which is the TV Pro Audio GSAT Plus plugin, and it works quite nicely here in this classic mode. Looks really nice. Now this one doesn't scale as well over the whole range. I just made it really fit for 029, 0212, thereabouts. Yeah, so that looks actually really nice. So let's move over to the dynamics section. And you will notice that one problem that I have here is cross-dependency between different tabs. So, you know, I can dial in the bias here, and that gives me a nice dynamic here, but that doesn't mean that the EQ is still on the screen. So, you know, the levels are totally changing. It's really kind of weird between those, so at 0 dBs, between those tabs, sometimes I can't get it right. It's also using the 100 Hertz that we dialed in for the harmonics. So yeah, it's one of those things. But I'd use the Acon Digital Dynamics here. And when that is switched on, it's also even moving that other curve as well, right? So at least that is maybe consistent. Now we could maybe dial in a bit of a different knee, sharper here, yeah, that's better. Yeah, I mean, that's how I would add pretty much dynamics. Again, you can use pretty much any digital plugin, the one from your DAW. There's other free alternatives available. Let's move on. There's a very interesting plugin that I think more recently came out from Plugin Alliance, and I didn't understand this completely at first, but it's very, very relevant to what we're doing here. So there is a compressor that has just very different modes here. I use the limiter because it doesn't have a knee setting. I mean, it's very simple in terms of settings. Couldn't quite get it up as far. You'd have to readjust everything and, adjust the intensity here. And that intensity also goes for other settings, though. For example, it might go for the drive or for the EQ as well. Right, so I think it was pushing up that as well. But yeah, I was able to put in a very simple low shelf, bell, and high shelf curve to mimic this even. I showed you the dynamics, and here again, I was coming out with a very interesting pattern that we already covered before when we were looking at saturation analysis. And I think when I was pulling this up to a certain level, all of a sudden I started getting a similar shape here. And then finally, we noticed that when we really put this up more to the intended default value towards 0.5, there's also some bass noise. So I even recreated that here just by using some white noise, and you can put the volume here. So I'm not a big fan of this, but it's totally possible. Let's put this down a bit again. When you look at the original one and we're enabling Flutter and wow, so kind of something like this, there's also a component in this tone box that can do that, which is called drift. So you can do wow and Flutter both. Very nice. So of course, if you're using something like Tonebox, this is already kind of a chaining plugin in a way. You wouldn't need the Kashmir plugin at all. But yeah, for everything else, this is nice. And if you still want to tweak things, you can put all kinds of controls, say something from the EQ to one knob and from the saturator to another one and from the compressor to a third one, something like that. All right, that's it for today. Now we put it all together, a complete plugin analysis with all these aspects, EQ, saturation, compression. And this is Ollie Wu. See you next time. Bye.